Welcome to Institute for Diplomacy and Economy YouTube channel. My name is Haşim Tekineş. I'm a policy analyst at the Institute. Today, we will have an interesting discussion at the crossroads of AI, financial systems, and human rights. Artificial intelligence, AI, is now, and algorithms are now part of our daily lives, and we have great expectations from that. But it also poses some important challenges for us. So in a report published, this report published in August by our institute, the report discussed the weaponization of financial systems by authoritarian regimes against their dissidents. So I will discuss this report with its authors, and with its authors Mayra Russo, Sara, Heinonen, and Yasir Gökçe. Welcome to all, and thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thanks, Haşim, for the invitation.
And brief introduction. Sara is a doctoral student at Tampere University. Mayra is a doctoral student at Leibniz University, and they are both visiting fellows at Algorithm Watch. And our followers knows Yasir Gökçe, our director and international law expert. So before starting with the report, I would like to know more about your research areas, and could you please give us more information about your PhD research areas? Maybe we can start with Mayra.
So I am a fourth-year doctoral student in a computer science program at the Leibniz University. My thesis focuses on the use of semantic data models to document measurable bias in data-driven systems, which in layman terms involves the holistic description of training datasets and the produced output of machine learning models via controlled vocabularies or ontologies, like naming things as they are, with using things and using descriptors, relationships between them, as well as creating contextual knowledge graphs to give the underlying data more structure and improve the potential insights that can derive from them for different stakeholders across the AI supply chain.
Sara, maybe we can continue with you.
Yes, sure. So yeah, I'm Sara, and I am studying at the Tampere University. I recently started my PhD research, which deals with digital borders, citizenship, and a sort of everyday surveillance in the Middle East and North Africa region specifically. And so, yeah, in theoretical terms, my background is more on sociology, media studies, and a more like human viewpoint of technology and datafication in general. And I deal with terms like data colonialism and how it affects the historical conditions for certain data policies in the region. And on the other hand, also digital citizenship and its restrictions on specific minorities, such as refugees and migrants. Yeah. So that's basically my topic.
Yasir?
Yeah, fortunately, I am through with my dissertation, my PhD. It's pertained to intersection between international law and cyberspace, how the traditional concepts of international law can be implemented in cyber domain, in cyberspace. That was my major. And the minors, I studied the cyber operations, destructive cyber operations, and to what extent they can be regarded as the use of force, as the violation of sovereignty and the violation of non-interference principles stemming from international law. Yeah, I studied a lot on cyber operations of destructive nature. Apart from that, one of my majors are the studies around human rights. Yeah, because of the circumstances that we found ourselves in, I have had to deepen my knowledge on human rights law. I had to read thousands of case law of European Court of Human Rights or the decisions of UN committees, United Nations Human Rights Council, etc. The scrutiny of the violations in Turkey required me to deepen my knowledge on these aspects, on these areas as well. So the human rights, I can regard myself as an expert on human rights.
No. You're also working at the Algorithm Watch. I'm talking, of course, about Mayra and Sara. And could you please also give us a little bit more information what you are doing that? And maybe before that, you can also, Mayra, we can start with you. You can also give some information about what is Algorithm Watch and what does it do? What is our activities? What is its activities?
Sure. So broadly, concisely, the three of us came together under the Algorithmic Accountability Reporting Fellowship. That is a program put together by Algorithm Watch, which is a human rights organization based in Berlin, but that covers the European Union area, where they are looking into through either policy or journalistic investigation into all the ways that algorithms are being deployed in society and the more or less negative impacts that they are having in society at an individual or a collective level. So in that sense, so we are not technically working for them or with them, but we were collaborating as fellows during from January to June of this year, where we were all looking into the broad topic of cases of potential discrimination under the financial system in the European Union. So that's more or less how our little group came together as well, because of this common interest. Of course, each one of us had a particular defined idea or a pitch, and then we worked it in together into what yielded this report.
Yeah, Sara, would you like to add your view?
Yeah, thank you, Mayra, for the great recap. I think our group specifically in Algorithm Watch, because we had multiple fellows in the program, I think we were all, like me and Yasir and Mayra, we were all collectively kind of interested in similar themes or topics around like financial, the intersection between finance and tech. So our group had a specific focus on financial inclusion or exclusion, I would say. My own research also was very related to asylum seekers and their access to banking, and then the subsequent push to the informal market because of ineffective regulation and so forth. And we had different kind of countries and different kind of cases that we also studied, apart from this great report that we wrote. But so my other focus was also on others, especially sanctioned countries such as Syria and Syrian refugees residing in Europe who don't have an access to financial systems or banking services. So yeah.
And this report you wrote, focusing on the Turkish immigrants whose accounts are closed in Western countries. So, Yasir, how did you decide to focus on this issue? What was the main factors or reasons that push you to look more closely to this subject?
Yeah. Actually, I wasn't aware of the existence of account closures up until I came across this issue. It's crazy. There are immigrants in Europe, they are embroiled in an abundance of problems. They had difficulty in many aspects. And on top of that, they got their bank accounts closed due to the interpretation stemming from the country that they escaped from. More precisely, they escaped from an interpretation of counterterrorism law in Turkey or in their respective countries in an effort to find a new place for them and for their family. But this nightmare followed them till Europe. And what attracted my attention was an interpretation and implementation of the terrorism laws of the governments in jurisdiction in Turkey has spilled over into the jurisdictions in Europe. Generally, the way for this transfer of the effect of the court decisions, that there's such a proceeding. The two countries, the EU countries and the, let's say, Turkey, have the relevant bilateral agreements to recognize their respective court decisions. But a court decision pronounced by criminal court has an impact in EU without going through the respective envisioned mechanisms stipulated in the relevant bilateral treaties. The Turkish authorities publish a sanction list that does not based on the criminal court decisions in Turkey, and they are directly being implemented by the authorities here in Europe. That attracted my attention, and in that regard, I found a gray area in the financial systems. We found a gray area in the financial systems, and the way in which the anti-money laundering and financing against terrorism regulations are implemented here in Europe by the financial institutions, and how they are being misused and abused by the Erdogan government. Yeah, the topics around such misuse attracted our attention, and we landed on this.
If you're a dissident in an authoritarian regime, maybe you can escape physically from that country, but you cannot escape its financial systems, financial regulations. Do I understand right?
Yeah, exactly. Correct. The financial systems adopt those interpretations of the authoritarian governments and their policies, and they feed their database with the false and politically motivated information that they got from the authoritarian countries. Yeah. That's the problematic aspect.
Mayra, how did you collect the data? Could you please give more information about your research methodology?
Yes, sure. So the research methodology per se was like the way that I see it was split into two main areas. Through performing in-depth interviews, basically documenting the testimonies of people impacted by an account closure or an account or having their account blocked, and then through interviewing experts and industry insiders. That was one of the main ways of collecting data, like the testimonies, building the human-led story to say something. And that this was countered by doing a lot of desk research. I know that through Yasir's legal expertise, he had to review a lot of laws and into that sense, and then also literature review of existing articles already on the topic, reports like the ones that we, not as detailed as that, but also on financial exclusion. There's a lot of interrelation into how this anti-money laundering regulation is tied with the trickle-down effects on people that want to access financial systems. So a lot of NGOs are also putting together these reports. And then also news coverage, even though it's not a very hot topic, it is a topic that is being lightly talked about, as even though there is this very political undercurrent for how our report is focused, there's also other people that are being affected by it, even if they are not necessarily people that have unfortunately had to leave their home countries. These account closures are also affecting other typology or other type of people as well. So there is a bit of news coverage in that sense going on. So that's more or less how we tackle the data set generation and how we collect, how we carry our methodology.
Yeah. As Mayra explained, the report is more focused on Turkish case, and you can also see from its cover there's Erdogan and the Turkish flag. But is it only limited with Mayra a little bit explained, but maybe we can discuss it with Sara. Is it only the data or the incidents only limited with Turkish case, or did you find similar cases in other countries or other regions?
Well, actually, the motivation behind my pitch was because this happened in Spain, in my city where I live. It was a particular case of somebody that had their account blocked and then closed. It's very fast. Everything happens very fast. So in the end, yeah, we uncovered that this was also happening in other countries. In my case, my investigation was focused also in Spain, not only in one city. Of course, this happened in Valencia, in Barcelona, in Madrid.
And the victim was immigrant. Am I right?
Well, in the end, the people that are coming forward are immigrants, yes. But unfortunately, the data collection doesn't like the data per se doesn't exist. So it's very difficult to have a broader sense of how much of who can be a victim of this. So I cannot really say if it's just immigrants or there are some nationals that are having this happen to them. But yes, unfortunately, the people that we managed to connect with and to collect their testimonies were all immigrants.
Yeah, and in this research period, you had talks with lots of victims. So, Mayra, how these account closures affected the lives of these victims? What was your observation?
So, I think it's very important to understand that access to banking is an essential necessity. And if I may be corrected by Yasir in like the legal terminology, but I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be guaranteed as a right, especially in the EU, where even people without means per se have access to like a basic bank account due to how everything goes to the bank. People need a bank account to get paid, to pay their bills, to sometimes even just to take the bus, you need a card, like it's very, maybe we're not conscious enough of how much we need a bank account and a bank card to get around and just get basic things done on a day-to-day basis. Of course, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, this was even in some countries, this was not even like a normal thing. Cash was a bit more friendly and more accepted, but society has had this turn where bank cards are even more enforced, and sometimes you just go into a shop and you see that you cannot even pay with cash anymore. So that option is not even there anymore. So once you're there in that mindset, in the sense of like you need your bank account to exist, I guess. Testimonies that we managed to collect yielded some like the emerging personal implications were there, going from just the initial shock of what's going on, like not understanding why the bank has closed your account, because sometimes you're not even getting a straight justifications or explanations from your bank. Nobody's answering your calls for like in that sense. So just that initial shock of not being able to have a discourse with your bank, to then, for example, losing the inability to pay your bills or your loans if you have outstanding loans, salaries of your employees if it's what you have is a small enterprise or a small company. So this then leads to possible interruptions to your commercial activity, because there's no way to have any activity in that sense. You cannot pay, you cannot receive anything. You might just have to close your shop because you cannot pay the rent, for example, and you cannot pay your customers, your workers, because there's also this problem of you have your account closed here, you don't know how long it's going to take to reopen. Maybe you will not be able to reopen. And then what happens if the next bank flags you already because you've already had your bank account closed at the first bank. So there's this increased uncertainty as to when you will be able to access another bank account. For cases of people of very like vulnerable communities, like immigrants or refugees, for example, maybe they weren't able to access subsidies from the government because they don't have an account to get the money. And just that sense of stress and anxiety where you don't know what's going on, you've lost also trust in the system, like you've lost that trusty relationship you had with your bank. Some people that we spoke with for a report also, they felt like reputational harm, like in the sense of like they didn't know they felt like they were being persecuted, and they also felt like, like their reputation was being damaged because you were being called a terrorist, for example. And in the end, that's not true. That's what the bank is saying that you are. And that's the message that implicitly being given to the people that work with you or are associated with you, because you have to start to say, oh no, my bank account has been closed, I have to change these things. So it might not seem like it's a big deal, but for these people, it is. So it's something that we really wanted to portray in a report, because in the end, it can change your life in that sense, like from one day to another, there's all this fallout, and yeah.
Yeah, it is not as dramatic as like torture cases or killings, but it still deeply affects people's lives, right?
Yes.
Before finishing, I would like to ask all of you, what should be the key takeaways for our readers, for your readers, from this report? Maybe we can start with Sara. What would like to say to readers and maybe authorities?
Yes, so I think what was like very prevalent in the report was the sort of politically motivated decisions and manipulating these like sources, and then this sort of data is being used by data centers, the banks, the regulators, and so forth, and like open source data that's being used, which is very evident in this report, is that the use of social media, or like where the information is just like the data is not verified, and then a lot of and then these entities that put individuals on asset freeze lists or blacklists, financial like blacklists, it's a very big, like it's very hard to get your it's very hard to pursue any legal actions against them, also because there's this sense that there's no accountability in that sense, because the data is very hidden. It's hard to access because, like Mayra said, when people either close when banks either close your accounts or refuse to even open them in the first place, they don't have to provide an explanation. And in some countries, in terms of like national security, they're actually not allowed to disclose any of these reasons. So there's that like very big lack of accountability and transparency. That's one of the biggest issues in here. And yeah, in terms of some like other cases of, I don't know, restricting bank accounts or so forth, that was like, they also, like when it comes to migrants or refugees or immigrants, it's like it also interferes a lot with social welfare policies, and like people who are marginalized, such as the asylum seekers, not necessarily people who've been in the country for a long time, but they intertwine with like the anti-money laundering and counterterrorism laws, which makes like your everyday finances really, really difficult, because they're being surveilled all the time. And if you make like that one tiny little mistake of transferring money to a relative, you might just get flagged, because the bank is going to be like, oh, what is this, and who did you do this for? And there's like a clear like ambiguity behind it, because that's not how banks treat European citizens, or like a more mainstream population, I would say. So yeah, and it's all like the end result is the same, which is either financial exclusion or partial financial exclusion. So yeah, I think that's the main point.
Mayra?
I think I have to echo what Sara said. And also, I mean, as a takeaway and as a plea, I guess, to the banks and to this big conglomerate of technology being infused into these processes as well, is that we have to remain vigilant in a sense, and be aware of our rights as citizens or as of these countries, and to also make a call for better communication mechanisms for recourse as well, to be able to get answers to this. I mean, I guess the takeaway is clear in the sense of there's an abuse of regulation by the banks, by maybe, yes, in that sense. But also, what can the everyday citizen do? How can we become a little bit more cognizant of our rights, of the mechanisms that exist there to ask questions, to make sure that we can fight a little bit more for what's rightly ours? So for me, the takeaway would also be this shouldn't be happening. That's what I would like to take away from it. I think from some of the interviews that we carried out with some of the people that share their testimonies, the more aware you are of your rights, the more you know how to use basic like the GDPR, the faster you get answers. And maybe sometimes you get you can get your account reopened, for example. Of course, this is not a resource that's available to everyone, because refugees, for example, do not have this literacy. Unfortunately, they are already so vulnerable and so just fighting for the basics that they will not be able to fight for this. So they do need the average citizen, us that have the fully fledged rights, access to them, to make noise for them below us, in that sense of what are our rights. If we can fight for our rights, if we can be knowledgeable of how to use them to get through these murky processes and opaque systems, then maybe we can make it better for the people that don't have that access or that literacy.
Yasir, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, of course. The biggest takeaway that I would like the readers out of the report will be, I agree with Sara in the sense that it's very difficult to fight or struggle against such decisions. The banks, as a reasoning, tell you, this is the way I regulate it. I am regulated, and I am not obligated to give any reasoning or any answer in terms of why I shut down your account. But the way the dissidents or the victims kept up with their struggle in Turkey, they should maintain their struggle here as well. They should fight and struggle against those labelings of the Erdogan government in the case of Turkey. Almost 1 week after the publishing of this report, dozens of victims and associations were included in the sanction list by the Erdogan government. And they called me and asked me what they can do against those decisions, and advised them to do some preventive, corrective, and preemptive measures. In terms of preventive measures, what can they do? After the inclusion of the sanction list, they can get in touch with the giant financial data providers and fill out the relevant privacy data protection requests and ask whether their personal data are being processed by those giants. What do I mean with these firms, financial data provider firms? LCEG, Dow Jones, or Refinitiv, or what else? Comply Advantage, LexisNexis. All those firms are functioning as the intermediary between banks and the Erdogan government. They collect the data out of those sanction lists and feed the databases of the banks with those manipulated and politically motivated data. And they can fill out the form and ask whether their data are being processed. And if yes, they should challenge those processing, because this such of processing is against Article 22 of GDPR and against the provision of a decision being taken in an automated manner against oneself. And another advice that I can give to the relevant stakeholders is backup accounts. If they envisage that their bank accounts are going to be closed, they should, from now on, generate or open new bank accounts. These are the preventive or preemptive measures. The corrective and reactive measures can be resorting to the internal remedial mechanisms of the banks. If they got a no answer, a negative answer, they can challenge those decisions before various judicial or semi-judicial authorities like ombudsman or the regional data protection authorities. They can challenge those decisions of the banks before those authorities, and they can even file claim for damage for their material or immaterial damages. As Mayra told, there are many impacts of those data bank closures, like damage to reputation, damage to the rights to maintain a livelihood, a dignified livelihood. All these entities are being damaged, and one can file proceedings against those damages. And a decision stemming from an authoritarian country, policies, practices have an impact in democratic countries. Those can be challenged before the regulatory authorities regulating the associations or before the relevant authorities in EU countries. The normal way of getting this done is having those decisions recognized by the judicial authorities. But that doesn't the case in the case of the financial institutions and the mechanisms that they established according to their anti-money laundering regulation or countering the financing of terrorism mechanisms. I would like to address to the dissidents, to the victims, and there are still measures that they can do, that they can employ, and the way they maintain their fight in Turkey against those labels, I suggest them to maintain their fights in Europe as well.
These are very useful and valuable advices for the victims. And you all three had done a great job with this research and report. And let's hope it will be the beginning of something good for the victims and the authorities, the relevant authorities, banks or EU institutions take this report, your report, into consideration in their new next steps. Thank you for joining this program, and thank you for our followers. Have a nice day.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.